Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are excited to have our next guest joining us again, Grace Gooby joining us, from Blissful Journey Wellness to talk more about her work as a certified breathwork facilitator, trainer, somatic coach. And again, the name of the company is Blissful Journey Wellness. Welcome back today. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Well, we're excited to have you back. And Grace, just off the top, tell us how we could reach you. Would you mind sharing the website, phone number?
Sure. The website is www.blissfuljourneywellness.com. We are on Facebook at Blissful Journey Wellness LLC and on Instagram at Blissful Journey Wellness.
Beautiful. And I know you work side by side with your husband. His name is Stephen, right?
Yes.
His background is also breathwork, bodywork, yoga.
Yes. He brings all of that expertise in.
Great. Well, we're excited to have you back here and to talk more. I know we discussed breath work, right? Mostly. What did you want to work on for today?
Today, I would like to focus on breath work so I can tell you, I can tell you how I got started with it and how it
And then
changed.
people say, breath, we all breathe, right?
Right.
So most people don't think about it. Could you share?
Yeah. So breath work, it's when we say breath work, it's something that you would actually set aside time for.
Okay.
So it's like with any practice, like with yoga or meditation or any self-care, you set aside time for a practice. So that is one way to do breath work on your own. We also do facilitated sessions, which are about an hour long, and we work with the person and guide them through the session. And then we also work with groups, so we can work with a group of people and guide the group through the session. So that's breath work.
Now, how did you discover breath work? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. So I went to let's see, I had my first breathing session back in probably 2012. And after the session, I felt like I was walking on air.
Mm-hmm.
It just totally blew me away. And I felt so good. And it was something I had to pursue. So I went on and I became a breathwork facilitator and a trainer and started training other breath workers. And it's something I became passionate about. It really changed my life. I had amazing changes. So, and I can share that story with you if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping you would.
Yeah. So, I was at a breathwork training and I had this memory that came up during a session. And it was from when I was about 2 years old. And the memory was that I was sitting on my caregiver's lap and we were being silly. We were playing around and it turned into teasing. So the whatever was being said wasn't true. It wasn't fair, and it was hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
I was getting upset, and I said to stop. And the more I got upset, it seemed like the more they laughed and kept teasing. And I was just so upset, and so I said, "Shut up." And I got slapped across the face. And in this memory, everything suddenly made sense. It's like my whole life made sense in that moment that I got slapped. I understood at that time that it wasn't okay for me to speak up for myself. It wasn't okay for me to be angry. It wasn't safe for me to be angry, and it wasn't safe for me to set healthy boundaries. So all of that, it was like a new awareness and a new understanding when it came through in that breath session. And I could understand how everything happened in my life from that moment on. I used to get really anxious when I had to speak in front of people or do presentations. I would get nauseous and just it was terrible. And it was so bad that when I was growing up, my junior year of high school, I found out that the top 3 people in the class had to give speeches at graduation. And so my senior year, I deliberately dropped my grades so I wouldn't be one of those 3 people that had to give speeches at graduation.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it explained relationships, how they were such a wreck because I couldn't set healthy boundaries. And the thought of conflict was just terrifying. I would just give in. I was basically a doormat, and I was exhausted all the time because I would overcommit because I couldn't say no.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was a lot. So I used to be really spacey before breath work. So it was hard for me to focus. And I was a loving person, but I didn't love myself.
Mm.
So I worked hard for other people, trying to be perfect and do the impossible. So with after the breath work, things began to shift. So I became more grounded and was able to focus more. My expression opened up because it had been shut down. Um, see, I became more in my power.
Mm-hmm.
I was more strong. I was more confident, uh, and things were less stressful. I was more in the flow of life, and I actually began teaching classes and doing presentations. And my creativity opened up, and it gave me the strength and the courage to leave that last unhealthy relationship. So, and that was
Wow.
like a weight lifted off of my shoulders. um, I worked more on myself and discovered self-love, and that actually brought me to find my husband, my soulmate, Stephen. So,
Oh, beautiful story. And where was this, by the way?
in New Hampshire. So
Oh my
I met
goodness.
him several years before, but it wasn't until after I came up here that we actually got together. So
And how things just work out, right?
yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. And then this happened how many years ago?
This was in 2019. So yeah,
Wow.
about 5 years ago.
Amazing. And then obviously him being in the field, right? So share a
Right.
little bit about him if you don't mind.
Sure. He's his background is in yoga, so he does Kundalini yoga, and he's also a body worker, so he had a massage license, which he doesn't do anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
he's been able to bring a lot of that and apply it to the breath work that we do. So
Wow.
he has a lot of insights and all of that. So
And you mentioned, I mean, some big changes you can expect with breath work, right? Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that it can help with?
sure, I'd be glad to. So um I've had probably close to 1,000 breathwork sessions myself, and no two are the same.
Okay.
So sometimes there are tears and sometimes there are not. Sometimes there are little things that shift and sometimes they're big things. So a little thing or a subtle change might be that you notice you're reacting different when you're in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or when something unexpected happens, you feel more in the flow or you're not so stressed. And then the bigger things could be things like trauma that you experienced from your past and that's come up to be resolved. So there are different things that happen. I find that things happen they tend to unfold in the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the interesting things is a lot of those characteristics that I had before breath work are actually things that show up in your breathing. So everyone has a breath pattern, and a breath pattern is basically where your breath is going and where it's not going. So for instance, if it could be a breath that is only up here in the chest, or it can be a breath that's only in the lower part of the body. So there's
Okay.
lots of different combinations. But the things that I can look at someone breathing and tell if they're grounded or not. if they have perfectionistic tendencies, if they're somebody who's a real go-getter, it gets things done. If they are a very loving person, or if they're guarding their heart.
Okay.
So a lot of these things are things that I can tell by the breath. And it's interesting that when we can free those restrictions in the breathing, it actually frees that up in life.
Wow.
So, yeah, your breath tells a story, and you can change that just by changing the way you breathe.
Wow. I feel like I breathe wrong a lot of times. When I breathe in, my diaphragm should be going out. And a lot of times I suck it in and it's opposite. I hate that. How do you
Wow.
reset that?
So we would reset it in a session. So what we would do is work with you to correct that pattern.
Okay.
And what you can find with that, we actually call it paradoxical breathing. When the belly goes in instead on the
Yeah.
inhale instead of out. Um, and you can have all kinds of positive shifts. It's a big positivity shift when you can correct that pattern.
All right. Thank you for that. And also, at this time, we just need to remind everyone how we could reach you.
The website is
Yep.
www.blissfuljourneywellness.com. Facebook is Blissful Journey Wellness LLC, and Instagram is Blissful Journey Wellness. And yeah, the email is info@blissfuljourneywellness.com.
All right. Do you want to talk a little bit about breath work and how it affects our nervous system?
Sure, sure. So when we think about the nervous system, um, when we understand how it works, we can use the breath in even a more powerful way. So what happens is, if we look at the autonomic nervous system, we have the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so the sympathetic nervous system is the one that is more active. It's a more active state. And a lot of times our bodies will go into that state when we're in survival mode, or if there's a perceived threat.
Okay.
So, and you're probably familiar with the responses, the fight, flight, and freeze
Yep. Mm-hmm.
responses, where we either want to fight the threat, we want to run away from the threat, or we freeze, like playing dead.
Right.
But what happens is our body can also go into this sympathetic state when
Okay.
we're under stress. Okay, when we're under stress, when we're overwhelmed, when we're overstimulated, when we have a lot of stress going on, it can go into that state, and we kind of get stuck there. And then the other part of that is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is we call it rest and digest. So that's typically we're in that state when we're resting or digesting our food, and it's a calmer state. So, and the body kind of balances between the two for whatever it needs at the time.
Okay.
So, if we get stuck in the fight or flight or freeze, then we don't get to rest.
Yeah.
And then we don't get to heal, we don't get to recover, and then so on. So, what happens is we can use breathing to shift and to self regulate. So, when we get all stressed and we're in that stuck place, we can actually do some breathing with a longer, a calmer breath to bring that back into parasympathetic.
Oh.
Okay. So we could also use the breath to bring to a more active state. So I know when the kids were younger, and I would get home and I would be so tired, and I still had to cook dinner,
Yeah.
and I would sit down and take like 10 minutes to do some activating breath, and I had plenty of energy to do all the stuff I had to do. So just taking a few minutes to bring in a more activating breath brought more energy and more focus.
Got it.
So my youngest son,
Yes, I want to hear about him.
Yes, he's such a sweetheart.
Mm.
When he was 14, it was actually the week of his 14th birthday. I took him to a breathwork training. We did homeschool, so I took him all over.
Of course.
Everything. So, um, but he went to the training and learned to do this breathing that we do, and he was able to use it. He loved it. He said it was the best birthday ever, and he would use the breath in school when his girlfriend broke up with him and had a heartache. So he used the breath to kind of heal from that. He used it to process his grief when one of his friends was killed in a car accident.
Ah,
Yeah, it was rough. But he was able to process that. And then also he would use it because he was breathing regularly with this breathing. He had better athletic endurance at school. So he was the geek, really smart with all the computer stuff, but he could outdo the football players in athletics. So, but one of the things I wanted to mention about this is that when we can integrate emotions and trauma kind of as they happen,
mm-hmm.
as we encounter them, we're less likely for those things to become baggage that we carry on around the rest of our life.
Yeah.
So it's a powerful tool to learn early on.
And he learned, you said at 14, right?
Yes, he's 24 now.
Amazing. Does he still partake in breath work?
He does. He does.
How often? Just curious. What is, normal for someone to, I mean, since you're in the business, you're doing it every day. But
Right.
for someone on the outside, are we supposed to do it every day? Are we supposed to do it every few days?
What I would recommend is to do a little bit of something every day,
Okay.
whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes. I mean, Stephen and I do our morning routine is, we'll get up and do yoga and then we'll breathe for about 20 to 30 minutes. And it's a great way to start the day. So for a daily practice, I would say anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Um, I would say maybe a longer session. A typical full session is about an hour.
Okay.
And I would say maybe once a week would be a good interval for that. And then certainly if someone is going through, something that's come up, to maybe work with a facilitator and do sessions maybe even more frequently or maybe once a week for a little while.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks so much. And do you want to go over the difference with, I believe it's called meditative breath work and integrative, right?
Yes, yes. So this kind of breaks it down. We talked about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic states.
Okay.
So one integrative breath work is the one, it's a more deep, more active kind of breathing. So it brings more energy into the body. And this one it really engages the diaphragm, which is
Mm-hmm.
our primary breathing muscle, really. It's connected at the bottom of the rib cage. And there's lots of benefits, health benefits to having a deeper, more diaphragmatic breath. One is better cardiovascular health and certainly respiratory, but also for immune function. So those are all some good benefits of breathing. It also helps clear the head. So I always had a lot of mind chatter
Mm-hmm.
where I couldn't shut off the brain,
Yep.
and it kind of cuts through that. So yeah, but it also opens up creative channels. So people can um, have lots of ideas that can come in while they're breathing, and it can help with more energy, more focus, and it even helps people have mystic experiences sometimes. So, and there are different breaths to do it. It's not just like one breath to do it, but there are different patterns of it may be more than one inhale and then an exhale. It may be a faster pace. It may be in and out through the mouth. There are different ways to do that to achieve that integrative breathing. And then meditative breath work is a calmer breath. So this is we are engaging the parasympathetic nervous system. So it tends to have a longer exhale, and the longer exhale helps the body relax. And it's closer to what our normal breathing would be. So normally we're meant to breathe in and out through the nose, just because that's how we're built. But a lot of these different breaths can either bring the breath in through the mouth or the nose. So it just depends. Typically, I use a combination of the integrative breath and the meditative breath. As I mentioned, we would normally go for an hour if we're doing a full session. But yeah, I typically will use a little bit of the integrative breath and then drop into meditation. So I teach some classes online a couple of times a month that are breath and meditation classes. And what I find is that it helps cut that mind chatter, and then I can drop into meditation easier and quicker and get a lot of insights in that space. And it's just very calming and relaxing, so the good stuff can come through.
Thank you for that. And in our last few minutes together, I know we still have a lot more to cover, but Matt, get to it through it all. But did you want to talk a little bit more about some of the reviews or the somatic breath work? Because there's a lot of coaching and things that you offer. So I just want to make sure we are, covering mostly everything that we can.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I do somatic coaching. And I do usually bring a little bit of breath into a session, depending on what is supportive for the client. So we might do a few minutes of breathing to kind of settle into the session. And then if something big shifts in that session, a lot of times we'll use the breath work to help integrate that. We do one-on-ones. So I do breath work and somatic coaching sessions, and then and those are offered in person and online. We do classes and workshops. We do 2 to 6 day breathwork retreats. These bring in a lot of other things, like we bring in yoga, we bring in some somatic practices, some other things, also spending time in nature. So we do the retreats here at our home, and it's a beautiful area. So there are lots of big trees and lusciousness outside. And we also offer a VIP experience. So if somebody wanted to come and spend a few days with us, then we would cook for them and nurture them and customize like their personal, according to their goals, bringing in breath work and whatever empowerment, whatever they wanted to work on, we would do that.
Beautiful. And also, if someone does want to reach out at blissfuljourneywellness.com, that's the website, right?
Yeah.
They could book a consultation there, correct?
That's correct. We offer free discovery calls.
Yep.
So if someone wanted to call or schedule a call to see if it would be a good fit to work with us, we would be happy to do that and see what we could do.
Right. And people are talking about, for example, Astorga's Stallone, my experience with Blissful Journey has been life-changing. I can say that it was one of the best decisions I've ever made for myself and my family. I will be forever grateful for my time with Grace and Steve. They're a very compassionate, gentle, caring, and loving therapist that exceeded my expectations. With sincere honesty, I recommend them to anyone needing to take their healing journey further. And there's so many more reviews. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that today. We're going to get to that again next time. But thank you for being here. Always a pleasure to see you, and looking forward to the next time we connect. Thanks again, Grace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day. And to all of our listeners and viewers, stay tuned. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.